And we're live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Holy Crap, the Vlogcast. Vlogcast that comes from a skeptical point of view to answer some of the questions of why. Vlogcast started as a combination of spite and the Streisand effect because some people just don't know how to listen to an argument and say, you know what, that makes sense. Some people just need to follow through with the old adage, sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. I'm your main host. I'm known as Shujin all over the place. You can find me pretty much under all social media under that. It's good to be back. Would be even better if we had a few more people back, but we'll get to that in a couple of moments. From north of the border, and happy post-Canada Day 1 week later. Good morning, Heretic Woman.
Good morning, and thank you.
And from just over the water, over in Paris, France, good morning, Joseph.
Good morning.
And yeah, we're kind of waiting to see how this is going to play out. Not quite sure.
Do not forget, very soon it is the 14th of July.
So this is le jour de Bastille, huh?
Oh yeah.
No, don't worry, I'm going to get to that. Don't know where Dalan is at the moment. I'm hoping he shows up. However, with everything that's been going on for him, a little bit of downtime isn't so bad.
Well, gotta give the guy a break with all he's been through.
Yes, true. Yeah. Exactly so. Brigid, as we know full well, has been real tired the last couple of weeks. So if she turns up, she does. And if she doesn't, okay. Joey, of course, will be joining us momentarily, assuming that everything goes well. Tech has already decided he's got a lot of driving to do tomorrow, so better to get to sleep, which is fine. And he did say he was going to download the show so he could listen on the drive. So, hi, Tech. Screw you, man. Have fun.
So this is the Inshallah edition.
Yeah, the Inshallah edition.
We'll go with that. We may have somebody show up, but we'll see.
We are supposed to have somebody show up in 2 to 5 minutes, depending on how equipment works, etc.
Yeah, if I thought about that, maybe I wonder if Susie would be awake. Because
probably not, but you never know.
It might be even more fun if she's not really awake. Because I mean, think about it. Drunk Susie and tired Susie, almost the same.
Almost the same, yes.
It would be.
Drunk Susie is slightly more adventurous than tired Susie.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So yes, over the last, well, actually, it's been 2 weeks now. Yeah, a couple of things have gone on. First off, of course, American Independence Day. Thank you. Yes, we decided that gunpowder was a good way of covering up the alien invasion by blowing up the sky. So we did that. Up over there in Canada for Canada's 150th anniversary.
Yes.
You guys had a good time.
Fireworks an invitation?
I don't know. It was our fireworks are pretty awesome though. I had to stand around in the rain for 4 hours to see them, but you know, it was mostly worth it.
Yep, it was that. Last weekend I was down in Pittsburgh for Anthrocon. I had a good time. I also kind of overextended myself a little bit. You want to see part of my video blog, if you will, of sorts, find it under Shujin Tribble. Yeah, that was there was some tough times. And as was mentioned, Joseph, very soon, Bastille Day. So what are your plans for?
Oh, the usual.
Do you guys blow stuff up for the Bastille Day?
Well, the thing is, for about 10 years, I would go every 14th of July to the Eiffel Tower,
right,
to see if there's going to be fireworks. And like some years there were, and some years there weren't, and they never really announced it ahead of time.
That's annoying.
So I kind of stopped trying about 5 years ago.
That is
wow.
That is kind of weird. I mean, I would expect something like that you would have. I mean, something
publish it.
Yeah.
Leave it. Go ahead.
It's about local politics. I don't know how it works here. It depends on the mayor, and because it's all up to the mayor. It's not a it's the city of Paris who decides. It's not the national government. And one thing about this year, we had the Fête de la Musique a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And normally there's a huge live concert. And there's usually one on the 14th of July too, but those have been canceled.
For fears of terrorism.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I was gonna say only the French could be that blasé, but whether or not they have fireworks, I'm like, do we want the fireworks? I don't know.
Well, I do not care.
Yeah. Give me some more wine.
I will cover my disappointment in another bottle.
Avec le vin. Encore de vin. Yeah, I got to hear beaucoup de français in Ottawa last weekend. That's for sure. Oh, and the cliche. Well, okay. What if you bump into somebody and you're Canadian? What's the proper procedure there? Like, let's say you're on the street, two people bump into each other.
Well, in Canada, you'd say, "Look out, eh?"
Well, not quite. But I took a "How Canadian Are You" quiz, I don't know, several months ago. And the answer to that was, of course, you both apologize. Well, I found this to be absolutely true a number of times in Ottawa because it was pretty crowded and you're banging into people all over the place. And every time, both of us said sorry. So
if you want to start a conversation with a Canadian, you bump into them.
I guess. Oh, well. There we go.
Yep, makes perfect sense. So joining us, because we are decidedly lacking in Venn diagram occlusion right about now. Hi, Beth. How are you?
Hi, Shu.
Good to see you
good.
again.
Hi, Joseph.
Hello.
And her I talk to all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. Like I said, we don't have nearly enough crossover with all of our shows. I mean, it's incestuous relationship that we've got with all these guys, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It wouldn't be family, though, if we didn't.
That's true.
There is that.
Is this
That was
Kentucky?
cool. Yeah. Well, Pennsylvania. Close. Close with slightly less twang.
Yeah. Oh, the crazy, but no twang. I almost forgot to say.
No worries. All right. So Joey should be joining us momentarily, so we'll see how that plays out. So let me go ahead and get everything started since we've got most of whoever's going to be here at this point, and we'll have ourselves a good time. So with 5 minutes on the clock, your 5-minute freestyle starts right now. Did you see what I named this one? Did you? Neigh-borhood, as in horses, because Anthrocon was last weekend, and as usual, it's kind of like going home. It's really weird for me because this was the 10th year that I've been there. I was told 2 years after my wife passed, you get somebody to take care of the little one. Come on down to Anthrocon. It's okay. Best. I mean, I've said it on many occasions. I did not realize that I had 5,000 close, warm, personal friends that I just had never met before. And now, 10 years later, it's like homecoming. Yeah, I don't get to spend as much money as I'd like to right now because of, reasons. But I have at least had the opportunity to go down, to check in with folks, to share breakfast. And that's also part of the reason why I labeled it the way that I did. The last couple of years, I've invited folks to join me to have what I've labeled breakfast with Fred. It's an opportunity to get a couple folks together Saturday morning on the con 8 o'clock in the morning, which for most people is just dark stupid, and take a walk, take the train, take another small walk, and literally just have breakfast next to the statue of Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers. And even though this year the statue was covered up because they're working on the archway, the guys were really cool about it. They're like, yeah, 6 or 8 weeks, we'll have a brand new neighborhood for Mr. Rogers because we're fixing it up. Cool. Even though we couldn't see the statue itself, it was okay because it wasn't so much the statue, so much as the camaraderie and what he represents. And he represents, well, I said it once before. He and I would have disagreed on theology, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we would have totally agreed on the things that make us good humans to each other, good neighbors to each other. And that's something that is really special these days, and I feel bad for that. It used to be that you'd watch out for each other. Yeah, sometimes you'd have to yell and scream at each other because you got to get the point across. But it wasn't mean-spirited, might be the best way of putting it. I like being able to just arbitrarily, in the middle of the con, with 7,000 people around, I love being able to walk around and see somebody who's wearing a NASA shirt with the NASA meatball logo on it, and they're walking towards me and I'm going to be walking opposite direction. I see these people and I'm just like, hey, what? Nice shirt. Oh, yeah, thanks. And we get it. We get each other's attention. And for just that moment, there's that connection of appreciation for things that we like, things that we appreciate, things that we value. It's a shirt. Who cares? It's the message for the shirt. It's the camaraderie. It's the family. It's the community. It's the neighborhood that we have. And sometimes I think we forget just how small this earth of ours is getting. It used to be that, the world is getting smaller and smaller every day, with air travel being less expensive and faster. And, with all this mass communication like this, you are part of my neighborhood and I am a part of yours. I would like to always be a good neighbor to all of everyone, because I want them to be a good neighbor to me too. Actually, in on 5 minutes on the dot for a change. That was really nice. This is episode 169 on the docket, Your Honor. How do you know that? Oh, gods, do I hate that expression. And I wrote everything up very specifically and very intentionally because I did not want to write out Bruggenkate. I can read, I can spell out Sye Ten. I can go that far. But after that, I just said, you know what? Screw it. I don't care. If he shows up, fine. If somebody else shows up, fine. But you know what? As far as I'm concerned, screw y'all, because I ain't inviting you on my channel, because I have one big heavy duty rule. I will not have someone who is dishonest on the show. Period. And I think he is. But that's a whole other issue.
You know what the answer for that is? How do you know that I know or don't know?
We'll kind of get into part of that, because that layer upon layer upon layer. Heretic Woman, I did not go looking, unfortunately, because a little bit busy. I'm kind of figuring that you didn't hear anything out of Saudi Arabia either.
I did not.
Yeah, unfortunately. And yeah, it's been 2 weeks since the last show, but as we've said, this is probably going to be far more the norm than not at this point. So we take it with a grain of salt as much as we can. However, as of the recording of tonight's show, this is now 5 years, 22 days since Rafe Badawi was unjustly incarcerated for thought crime. Our thoughts and our hopes are still with you and your family. We're still hoping. So let's kind of deal with the big problem. Sye Ten Kate. Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea to go ahead and briefly explain who that is so that we can then go a little bit into the proper for this whole damn thing. Oh, and by the way, for those of you that are watching live, thank you. Feel free to take advantage of the live chat feature. If you want to live tweet at us, you can do that at myself, at Shujin Tribble, or to the show at Holy Crap TV. And I've got the text on the screen wrong. I'm going to go ahead and fix that. So who wants to go ahead and explain who Sye Ten is while I'm typing?
Well, he's a Christian apologist. A very, very irritating and annoying Christian apologist. And he's well known for doing lots of public debating, most notably that with Matt Dillahunty. And he is a presuppositionalist, which means that he presumes his God exists before even making an argument, which is irritating as hell.
Good cover.
Yeah. I know we're not at 10 yet. Damn it.
Soon.
But yeah, Beth, you probably have more detail than I do, though.
Actually, no, because he's so annoying, I ignore him. But yeah,
he's infuriating, and one of my biggest beefs with him is if anyone, you know, at a talk or at the Q&A of a debate or whatever, tries to ask him a Bible question, he will refuse to answer and will say, I don't do Bible study with atheists.
Yeah, what's annoying about presuppositionalists in Sye, most of your presuppositionalists fall into this category, is first they will presuppose their God. And they move the goalpost to presuppose a God. When you get further into the debate, because they cannot prove their God of Christianity or their version of Christianity. Especially if you get somebody like Matt Dillahunty, who is very good at debating. It comes down to then it becomes a deistic God. And they keep moving the goal, but then it becomes a supreme being. Then it becomes a unnatural force. They move it further back because as you press them, and it's very annoying.
Their ambiguity is both a shield and a weapon.
Yes.
But
yes.
As an answer to that, you really have to, you know, when they start getting vague beyond a certain point, then you just have to ask them to describe what are you describing? What are you claiming, dude?
Yeah, and a lot of them, when you push them on that point to define God, so to speak, they will not or cannot do it. Most of them is that they can't, but they refuse to do it. And just like Deb said, like if you use biblical citation in attacking them, for a better word, we'll get into that whole, well, you know, BS.
Yeah.
But at a minimum, you know, they have to be able to describe their God, because, well, all you have to do is ask them, well, what are you expecting out of it? What are you expecting it to do for you?
Yeah, there's a piece about this also that we've gone ahead and used the term already, and probably a good idea just to really quickly swing back to pick that one up. presuppositionalist or presupposition is basically already assuming something. Well, you would have heard this in crime dramas, assuming something into evidence that is not already proven true.
Yes.
Is basically the way of wording it. So, for instance, saying that God exists. Okay, first off, you haven't defined which God, because for all we know, it could be the flying spaghetti monster, it could be the great god Murphy, it could be Thor, we don't know. Although Chris Hemsworth, oh, I would kill to have his abs. The problem with this is they will say, my God exists. Okay, prove it. Don't have to, because he just does.
Yeah.
And that's really as far as you can push it, because they will typically go with the idea of it's as evident as air because you breathe. Now, I have not heard that argument, although I've heard a variation on it. Like, the variation that I've heard is it's as evident as a fish realizing that it's in water. It's just there. And it's like, no, it's not that. No, because I can blow air and I can move things with it. And I have something that shows me it's really there. And it's consistent. And so Sye Ten Brigid is specifically one of those people, one of who just says God is. Don't have to prove it. It just is.
Well, and the thing is, people like Sye Ten, presuppositionalists, cannot argue if they do not presuppose the existence of God. And what they're doing is they're taking away our arguments for them to prove that this God exists.
What?
Yeah.
They're trying to eliminate a whole line of reasoning because they cannot counter it.
Well, they're basically setting no-go boundaries for the argument, and I mean, with anybody, there's no point in even talking to anybody like that. I mean, you don't. If you're going to argue honestly, you don't have a choice. You can't choose your facts. I mean, you just can't. If you're going to talk about a problem or something, and here, the problem is another human trying to tell you what to do and get paid for it in the bargain. You can't really discuss it if you're not going to look at the totality of reality. I mean, you can't just pick and choose like that.
And that's part of the problem that we've run into.
It reduces the argument to take my word for it. And I mean, that's what any apologist argument comes down to in the end. It's just take my word for it.
Yeah. Now, the problem that we've run into with Sye Ten specifically, very, very specifically, is, like I put into the description for the show, he will typically use, not always, but he will typically use and I won't even call it an argument, but he will badger whoever it is he's talking with. When facts are brought into place, he will badger with the question, well, how do you know that? Yeah. And that's the problem. Because it's reasonable to go ahead and try to find out a source. We do that all the time, or at least we should. We try. But then he goes ahead and he uses it in the middle of a debate, but instead of using it as do you have proper facts, he'll simply use it as a browbeating weapon over and over and over again.
Well, and what he wants to do is twist it so that you somehow have to acknowledge that everything comes from his God. So how do you know that? well, you can only know things if God shows you, like stupid crap like that. That's where he's trying to go with that. It's very much like Matt Slick and his tag argument. You know, logic must come from God, therefore you're using God's logic if you're going to use logic. Well, which is bullshit. We all know that.
Well, it's just a big God did it. I mean,
yeah.
You know, it's basically, if you follow that rabbit hole all the way down, it's whoever's speaking. It's like somebody sticking a finger in every cake. They're just trying to take credit for everything.
Now, what makes this fun, and I say fun, and not meaning haha, I mean fun as in God damn it, is when this is done, when you're in a debate with somebody, a back and forth online, where you can type things and then get responses later, when everybody has the opportunity of looking up their stuff. If somebody says, can you prove it? How do you know that? That's okay, because you don't have a time constraint. You can go ahead and you can Google stuff up. You can check Snopes. You can check, go back into the archives of freaking microfiche if you have to, and see the original reports from who knows when. But when you're in a live situation, that's where it becomes no longer an honest respect for reality and facts and fact checking and fact gathering, so much as do you not have all of every citation of every thought you've ever had? Why don't you? Because when it gets turned back around, oh, how do I know? I got it out of my book. Then that's God.
Well, and that's this idea that, if for you to make a pronouncement about there being a God or not being, that you have to know everything. And since you can't know everything, you can't make a pronouncement, which is, again, a bullshit argument. But that's where they try to point you.
Well, one of the things that annoys me, and Deb, you and I have talked about this in the past, is that cat just jumped up. How did she get up here? Anyways, like you were saying, they expect you to know everything.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean, it's like, well, I don't have specific knowledge in that area. I have to rely on the experts. And what gets so frustrating for me is a majority of them will deny science.
Yeah.
It's like, and they deny the scientific method, which is not just a thing, it's a process as well. Science is, to arguments over semantics about what words mean. And they will intentionally use the vernacular, like the word theory.
Yes.
Well, to me, theory means something totally different than what it means to my coworkers. To me,
that's just abuse.
Well, and that's what they do, and they wear you down. That's why I got out of apologetics.
That's why you ask for, like, you have to define your terms. If you're not going to define your terms, or if you're misusing a term, if you agree on a definition of terms, and they begin to misuse it, then you just say you have to call them out on it. Like, basically, a conversation with an apologist, you're going to be calling them out on every logical fallacy they make, like every dishonesty they make, and that's the conversation is going to be that.
Yeah.
But like for instance, just yesterday there was a thread, and this guy was like, could the universe come into being without God? And I just said, yep. you know, it's like, is it possible? Like, well, yeah, of course it's possible. And then it comes back, you know, please present your proofs for this, you know? And I was just like,
but he's just turning the question around, because actually that's really sneaky, because what he's doing by asking that question is basically claiming that his God did create the universe.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Like
hold on a second though. It's not. It's trolling in order to. It's dropping depth charges. You drop out their question, and you wait for somebody to go ahead and nudge it. And okay, there's somebody who's going to go ahead and say yes, no, whatever. Gotcha. Now let's go ahead and start blinking away at somebody just to be basically just to be a troll.
Well, he didn't like my answer very much, because I said, basically, well, I know of no God, therefore my position has to be yes, because there's no other alternative.
It's basically a big gullibility test.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'll go with that. Here's okay. Speaking of trolling, by the way, I was just thinking about this because I've got a little pad of, you know, sticky note, a little pad of sticky note stuff, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, how much fun would it be to go into one of these debates, and I could see Matt Dillahunty being able to pull this off, because ain't nobody inviting me to one of these things, and please, me of all people, really? You really think somebody's going to want to talk to me?
You never know.
Come on.
I am no Dillahunty. I am no.
Throw it out there. And how did Dillahunty become what he is? By doing exactly
that.
Exactly.
And he's got a really great. All right, whatever. Deal with that.
We only see his successes, huh? Don't forget that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So here's the point. Get a pad of these, and have a foam board with a couple of specific terms written on them, and put it behind you. And you're going to go with the debate, and you're going to go, okay, you've gone ahead and used the term theory. Which version of the word theory do you want to stick with? Okay, you want to use scientific theory. Put it on the board. And every time it gets changed, well, no, wait a minute, that's not what you said you're going to be working with. So which is it going to be? Now that's just me being a little bit of a troll, big time troll, because, you know, I'm that kind of son of a bitch. I like to piss off people at the same time and tell them rules.
That's a good idea. Make a logical fallacy scoreboard. You know, every time they do one, they get one more score.
And the idea is to get the lowest score, of course.
Yeah. And of course, they're going to accuse you of making, because that's another apologist thing. They seem to be persuaded that many apologists, not all of them, but they seem to be persuaded that the fact that they say something, that they make an accusation, that it's true.
Yeah. And
probably much of their audience would agree with them, because that's who they're playing to. But yeah, like somebody, like I hear the strawman argument. You know, you're making the strawman accusation made a lot. Well, like there's no strawman in sight.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, when I took my classes in apologetics when I was in college, and I got thrown out of my introductory class twice. Same professor, too. He was also my advisor. And because even at the time, I was still a believer then. And I point blank said, you know, I said, what is the point of apologetics? I said, because we were always taught from, since I can remember, so we'll say 5 years old, even all the way up into college, when I took my classes in missionary history and all that other BS, that the Bible is so simple a 5-year-old could understand it. And that when you present the gospel to a new individual out on the mission field, they should be able to pick up the Bible, read it, and understand it. That's what I was always taught. That's what they taught in our missionary classes. So I had asked my apologetics teacher in class what was the point of it, and he threw me out twice. So that to me, I mean, you're talking that was back in the 80s. So for years and years and years, I just had this disdain apologetics because it is pointless. And basically all it is like you both have said, trolling.
Just take my word for it. Obey me. Take my word for it. Obey me.
Yes.
Yep.
And, you know, with their, of course, with their God is a fucking ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it before that there are apologists like, well, we mentioned him anyway. Might as well go ahead and use it. Matt Slick, where he has said proudly so, I've got my doctorate in what was it, biblical Greek or Assyrianism or whatever the hell language it was supposed to be, and it's like, why haven't you written your own version of the Bible so that your translation is sensible to everyone?
But
Why
even
haven't
then,
you?
even if he does that, the goal is still the same, just making other people obey him. And what the fuck language, you know, what does it matter what language it's in? Because, you know, it's got to be in yours, because the goal is to get you to follow him.
See, the reason why it's important is to try to figure out what the supposed, and I'm going to use this term probably not quite correctly, what the supposed nuance is supposed to be for the original concepts.
Why does that matter? Because if these guys are going to be, you know, abusing words like theory, well, what are they going to do with the words that are in the Bible? They're just going to make them seem, they're going to make them mean whatever they want them to on the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, as soon as you go down that road of dishonesty, I mean, you know, might as well stop.
That's like the time Ra tried to debate Matt Slick, and he just kept insisting that faith meant something different that would encompass how Aaron saw things, to the point that Aaron got fed up and quit the hangout because they refused to use the proper definition of faith. And I talked to Aaron about that, and he was like, yeah, there was no reasoning with those twits. Like, I was just wasting my time, so I left.
I would do a 3 strikes, you're out. With an apologist. Of course, it'll be a very short conversation. But I mean, just to set the guidelines out, say, okay, set the rules ahead of time. Maybe not kick them off the show, but just like, well, you're on mute. You can follow the show. We can see you sitting there watching. But from here on in, you're not part of the conversation.
Yeah. That would be nice.
Yep. So
and one thing these apologists forget is what they don't really think of is that when they're talking about a God, well, you know, a definition for God, a God is, most of what makes a God is somebody's willingness to accept whatever it is as one, whether it be, you know, aliens, some supernatural creature, or even my salt shaker. I can worship my salt shaker. It can be a god. It's really, it just comes down to the listener's willingness to accept, which means to cave in, to give up their self-governance and follow whoever's speaking, whoever's making the claim. And that's basically what it comes down to. Removing somebody's ability to survive for themselves. Plonks. Sorry.
No. Just as usual, just kind of waiting to find out if anybody wanted to drop in also with you. Don't worry. So let's kind of back this one back to the main at this point.
And if I'm not being clear, if I say something like that and I'm not being clear, I mean, this is stuff I think about a lot, but I'm not really much used to talking about it. So maybe it's clear for me.
Don't worry.
So if it's not clear, please please let me know.
Not a worry. If it turns out that something's going wrong, don't worry. I'll let you know. So the piece about how do you know that? Like I said, Sye Ten will use it dishonestly because his entire point is use it as a frustration tactic. And we know full well that sooner or later, other apologists or wannabes are going to go ahead and use it themselves. Are you okay?
Yeah, my pop filter just decided to launch itself at me for some reason.
Okay.
I bumped it before the show and it won't go back to where it is, and it also threw this plushy bunny at me.
All right then. So while you're fiddling with that, let me get back to this one. All right, so Sye Ten will use it, like I said, dishonestly. Sooner or later, other apologists in his corner are going to end up using it also when they can finally decide that, hey, this works because it frustrates the conversation. And
yeah.
How far? I mean, there is a dishonesty factor that's involved when you're not wanting to find out the answer, when you're just using it to stall, to frustrate. But how far along should we consider going with a point before we think that we shouldn't need to? Now, the whole idea of the 3 strikes rule, that's not quite the same thing, but I do think that that's not necessarily a bad starting off point. If you can show your point 3 steps back, I could see that as being reasonable if the person is honestly looking to find out, do you actually have good data?
Well, I think it goes to bring it even more into focus. We're already seeing it, or have seen it in the past, in the form of, were you there? It's the same same question.
Were you? Like all this shit you're saying, were you there?
Yeah, it's the exact same question, just worded differently. And we all know how frustrating. And in order to counter that, you have to rely on, in the case of creationism, the fossil records, transitional fossils, etc., etc. But in the example of creationists, many of them, pretty much all of them, will not accept transitional fossils, will not accept, evolution occurs every day. Open up your medicine cabinet, there's your evidence. I mean, just this past year, they had an experiment that shows evolution in plain time, and they nitpick the studies. So it's the same question. It's just asked in a different form. So I think, we know how frustrating it is arguing with creationists. Basically, when you're arguing apologetics, it's the same thing.
They basically want you to give up your... They don't even want you to... They don't want you to trust yourself, basically.
That's what it comes down to.
Your argument with them is basically, okay, am I going to use my own faculties to get by in this world, or am I going to follow this other guy? That's it. Or just like to give over the reins of my self-governance to somebody else.
Well,
that's the entire thing they're arguing. Every argument they make is that. It's what it comes down to.
Well, like that, I don't know if you guys saw that ridiculous evolution argument that I posted on my Facebook the other day. And it kind of was the same idea. Is like, the guy was like, well, you guys say that, everything is constantly evolving. Well, yeah. Well, that means everything's transitional all the time. We're like, wow, you actually might have a clue there. And then he comes out with, well, if everything's transitional, then nothing's actually fully completed. And if you're not completed, then, your brain can't have the thoughts that it has right now because your brain isn't completed yet. So you can't trust anything you think because your brain's not finished yet.
Yeah.
So how does he think? Like this,
well, no,
it comes down to this. Like he has exactly the same abilities as the person he's talking with.
Right, but he's saying because we're gonna say, well, of course our brains are functional and whatever. Well, that's because God made them and they're fully formed because God just zapped them into being. That's why evolution is wrong, because your brain's not finished. Because he's saying that it's not finished and something that isn't finished.
So how is he thinking? How is he speaking?
Because evolution is wrong and God made his brain finished as is.
Well, his and not the person he's speaking to.
No, everyone's, and that's why we're wrong.
Well, then how is he? Then how can he know anything then?
Because God told him.
Yeah, but that's what it's always going to come down to. That the guy trying to convince you is going to claim supernatural powers that only he has and you don't have, so you should obey him.
Yep.
Well, I think a point you made, Joseph, was too that in a lot of these discussions is they try to get you to question your own reasoning faculties. Like I had someone ask me the other day, well, how do you know that, and this was not even an apologetics conversation, I don't even remember what the conversation was. Basically, how do you know that's right? And I said, well, because science and the scientists and the studies, yada, 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 tell me, the preponderance of it. Well, how do you know they're right? And I'm like, because other scientists have come up to the same conclusions based on the same data set or on their own experimentation and testing of their hypotheses that this information is correct. I think we were talking climate change, which is not my strong suit. And it's like, well, how do you know they're right? I'm like, I said, you asked me the same question 4 times. Yep. I said, I have to take the bulk of the evidence that's presented to me and either so like I'll use vaccines for an example. I have a pretty firm grasp the idea behind vaccines enough that, the science, no, I'm not an immunologist, I'm not a toxicologist, I have no training in sciences or the medical field, not that type of understanding, but as a lay person, to know whether to get a vaccine, if it's safe or not, that type of, I have to trust others, the scientists, that they're going to present that, evidence to me.
But that's what it comes down to, because you're going to make that decision when you have to, because when it comes time to take a vaccine or something like that, at the time you're having the conversation, maybe you until then you've really had no need to bring into question how much you trust them and all that. Like every time you visit a doctor, like even me myself, I have trust issues visiting a doctor because I have no means of testing their knowledge, their ability. I don't know what they're going to do to me.
Yeah.
All I know is that I've got a problem. I got to trust somebody to help it. But I've got things to go on. Like if I got to go see a certain doctor, I can check on with his other patients, for example. You know, I can test this stuff. Like if you're going to be asked about a scientific theory and all that. Well, if you want to check up on the credibility of the sources, the peer review, how many times has the citation, how many times has the study been cited and all that, well, you can check up on all that. They're just capitalizing on the fact that you haven't done this checking up yet for a topic that really doesn't affect you in everyday life. I mean, which is why you've never checked up on it. But what they want you to do is affect practically everything in your life on something that you cannot check up on. I mean, it's like, the dishonesty of it it's maddening.
Well, it's like the other day, Deb, remember in that one thread where this lady was saying, was talking about doctors forcing people to sign papers and stuff when they're in the hospital.
Yes.
I'm like, and you're like, hey, Beth, how did that go with your stroke?
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
You're talking to a person who had that situation happen to her, and it wasn't necessarily, I mean, where I live, medical care is not the greatest, but I have been when I lived in Buffalo, I was power of attorney for my mother-in-law. So, in other words, you know, and one of the nurses tried to kick, and I'm like, no, I have a legal right to be here. I make her decisions when she's incapacitated. And it's just like, when Deb brought that up and I commented, she was like, she didn't know how to respond. In fact, I think she totally ignored you after that question anyway.
Probably, yeah.
And that's what they do. If they don't like the response you give, they will either backpedal or they will keep up this badgering and questioning, how do you know?
It's just bullying.
And it's like, yeah.
It's just to wear down your will until a point where you are willing to cave and obey them. That's it.
Yeah, that's the problem. When it comes down to the dishonest tactic, the bullying tactic, the badgering tactic, that's the biggest problem that we end up having with this kind of thing, where you don't care what the answer is. You know, if it was a matter that you really did want to know what the answer was, okay, I'm on board with that. You know, being able for people to understand, I got this information from a group of people who studied this and found out how to check on it and figure out how to figure it out, which sounds like it's wrong, but it is actually the way it's supposed to work. You have to figure out how to figure out something out, which is all kinds of weird. But then the most evil tactic in the world is the converse. When you go ahead and you run it backwards and you say, okay, but how do you know it? And I need a prop. And they will use the tried and true method of, well, I have this book. Now, yes, it is a Unix programming book from 80. What the hell was this? 87? 87-ish? This was my wife's book.
It's probably got more far more accurate information than the other book.
Yeah. Yeah. So
how does that argument hold the water when, you know, most of what they claim isn't even in that book?
It doesn't, and that's the dishonest fact. And by the way, I think we need to really go ahead and hit this one really quickly. By the way, before we go any further, how do you know that? Is Sye Ten and Kate? Were you there? Is typically
Ken Ham.
And I have a book. Is
Ken Ham.
Also Ken Ham. And occasionally it will be, oh God, what the hell is his name? The Crocoduck.
Ten
Oh,
Hoven?
no.
Ray Comfort.
Ray
Ray
Comfort.
Comfort.
We'll occasionally use that one also.
Isn't Crocodile Kirk Cameron? No.
Well,
He's with Comfort.
Please be very, 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 very exceptionally careful about how you word their relationship, because I
always
would
imagine a leash.
That's metaphorically speaking. I would not be opposed to suggesting that there's a metaphorical leash between them. Beyond that, I would be very uncomfortable with saying anything beyond that. And I'm taking legal advice from the podcast in my head that's saying, don't say anything more, don't say anything more, don't say anything more.
I imagine a leash.
Yes, I know.
It's solely on me, guy.
Yep, and Heretic Woman's got the picture right. There it is.
Oh, and here's the second one.
Oh.
Yep, the Amish Wolverine. We haven't talked about him in a lot.
Yeah.
Were you there? And I have this book.
Yep.
Now, like I said, they are dishonest tactics, because how glorious would it be? Seriously, how glorious would it be to be in the middle of a debate, lay out a fact, and say, here's the fact of what you're talking about, and here's the number. Boom. Well, how do you know that? Oh, it's funny that you should ask, because I have this stack of 3x5 cards with the information I just quoted you, with the references right on the back side of it. Here's your card. How wonderful would it be to have a stack of these things ready to go, to just be able to go, here's the information? Or would you rather I just read it to you? And just to watch the frustration level go backwards. To play the game, to troll the game. I'm not talking about cutting it off. I'm talking about trolling the game back. No comments whatsoever. No. I would love to watch that. I would love to see Dillahunty do that.
Oh, yeah.
I wish it would work, but a lot of the answers I get, and maybe because of the issues I deal with, they will not accept peer-reviewed journal citations at all. If you present them with actual hardcore scientific fact on anything, whether it's evolution, vaccination, I've actually had people in conversation tell me point blank, please do not quote peer-reviewed articles. I don't accept them. I don't accept any science. There's nothing you can do. And I've actually had that. I actually got in a conversation about 2 or 3 weeks ago with one person who said, unless you can cite scripture resources, I will not accept any of your evidence. It's in the book. And this is, and I said, excuse me, but no, it's not in the book. What they do is they will cherry pick, they will twist passages to make the assumption or make the presupposition that it is in the book. And this is what Ken Ham does. Why he says, yeah, I mean, people will tell, and a lot of Muslims do this as well, that science is in the Quran, that microbiology is in the Quran. And it's like this totally in-depth could speak on to this point better than I could, but that's what they do.
What they're arguing, and they never argue directly or honestly, but what they're arguing is basically, why should you trust them? That's what it comes like. That's actually what they're saying. They won't accept your facts. They won't accept your evidence. But what they're actually rejecting is the people. They're saying, well, you should trust. Their entire argument is, well, you should trust me more than you trust them. And they will, of course, reject anybody who's not them or on their team or whatever.
When I used to argue the whole ancient alien BS, they were like, alien DNA or cloning and genetic modification, I had to think of the word, is in the Bible. And I'm like, okay, where? And, they go on this long rigmarole about how, God genetically engineered, or, we were genetically engineered. And it's like, okay, you took this one vague verse, and I don't have the specific verses off the top of my head anymore. That as when they took the rib from Adam, they said that he was genetically engineered. And I'm like, you took that as genetically engineering?
I would just ask them, well, okay, even if it is, what is that going to change?
Yeah.
I mean, are we going to suddenly, like, if I was going to provide you with the evidence for evolution, like just to put it right in front of your face, are you afraid that if you accept it, we're all going to turn into monkeys or something?
Well,
they
argument, yes.
And they see, a lot of the time they cling to this stuff because they so want to be special, extra special. Yes. We're made in God's image, therefore I'm super awesome, special. That's why they get so pissed when you say they're related to apes. Because I'm not no damn monkey. I'm from Jesus,
Yeah, feeling of superiority without all the work.
Exactly. I'm made in God's image, therefore I'm extra special. And if you try and give them facts that says, no, you're evolved from an ancestor of apes, well, then that takes that super specialness away from them because they're not made in the image of a god anymore. And they don't like that very much. So that's why they cling to that, we're extra special bullshit. And a few times I've had to say to someone, you're not all that. You're not super special. You're not chosen. You're not God's image. You're none of that crap.
You're a human like me. And you're working with the same faculties and the same resources, living in the same reality as me. The only difference is that you have given up the ability to judge your environment, to determine what's good or bad in your environment yourself. You've given the reins of that over to somebody else. And, in conversations like this, we tend to remain on the level of detail, which is, what's in the Bible and all that and who claimed what. But, I mean, more and more, I want to follow this rabbit hole down further to the actual psychological manipulation that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
What their goal is, because the entire goal for most is I don't know if I get into this, but I mean, if you've got somebody, claiming God, or claiming whatever, or claiming this belief and trying to get you on board, they're either a believer, who actually believes all of this, who actually they their survival guide is whatever they're throwing at you. I mean, that's how they get by in life, and they want you to. It works for them, so they want you to do the same thing, and it's almost an honest sentiment. But then you have the people who realize full well that it's all shite, and they just want to get you on board just to better manipulate you. So you have to kind of, before going down that road, you have to really decide which one, whoever you're talking to, which sort of person whoever you're talking to is. I mean, if you have to decide whether they're coming from a position of honesty or not, because if they are honest about the belief and all that, then probably most of what you discuss with them they'll have no concept of honesty and the rest of the discussion. But when you're talking with people like Sye Ten, Kate, and Matt Slick, I'm almost 100% certain they know full well that all they're saying is just complete shite.
Well,
So,
I think you hit a good point. Is what is the purpose of the conversation?
I mean, that's every conversation
like,
should have that question in it.
Yeah,
No?
and that's the thing. I mean, and I think what's so frustrating, being that I was a fundamental believer. I was studying to be a minister, and I think I finally had one of the things in the subsequent years after I deconverted was, what's the purpose of even talking to these people? Because they're not going to change my mind, and I'm not going to change theirs. So then it comes down to, you take somebody like, Matt or Comfort or Ham or Hogan. It's like, like you said, they have to know that they are full of shit. So what's the purpose? What are they trying to recruit? I mean, it's like I said, they're not going to convert me, so why are they doing this? I think most of it is just to be, my personal opinion is they're just trying to be jerks.
No, it's not. They're trolling out, and forgive me for using the term, they're trolling out a net and trying to get anyone and everyone that they can to follow along with them by pulling them along, by using what's an old tactic at this point that I remember from my days of having to deal with Microsoft back in the early 90s. It's a little something that's referred to as FUD. FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. If you can inject that into someone else, make them question, make them fear the information that they think is accurate, be uncertain of the validity of the information that they've got, and then doubt the validity of the information that they've got, you can then just scoop them up by saying, look, you can't trust any of that stuff over there, but I've got something that's been rock solid for millennia. You should probably come over here because I've got something that's stable. Even though they're actually showing you, some people are going to get this reference, they're showing you a picture that was taken with a tilt lens, so everything looks like it's, toy cars. Some people get that reference. Those of you that are photography people who get that reference, thank you. You're welcome.
But I sort of get it, but not quite.
I love tilt shift, but I don't see what that has to do with the point.
Well, okay. Let me explain this one, because I think maybe there's a worthwhile in this. If you were to take a picture of a cityscape from, let's say, 10 floors up, and you're looking down into a city, a metropolis, kind of like Manhattan, where all of the streets are, nice even grids back and forth, east, west, north, south. We kind of got an idea as to what that's supposed to look like. With a normal photography lens, everything is just the way that you'd expect it to be. Pretty much how we view stuff normally with our eyes. A tilt shift camera, you literally change the focus from being perpendicular, like a flat plane in reference to what you're looking at, and you tilt it so that it's no longer perpendicular, but a section of it is closer, a section of it is further away. And it gives a really strange appearance to a lot of stuff, where in some cases you can make it almost look like you're photographing a model. Really, really, really super detailed model, but it still looks like you've got this weird model that you're taking a really close picture of, even though your original is actually a cityscape that we would otherwise know and recognize almost immediately. My point is that if they can put enough fear, uncertainty, and doubt in somebody and then say, look at that picture that you've got there. It's wrong. It's weird because I'm making you look at it in a strange way, but I've got this painting that somebody made, but it was made by God. So come and join us because that painting is exactly the way that you want it to look instead of the form of that photo that I made you look at in a weird way because I'm trying to make it seem weird.
Okay, yeah. But they isn't that, well, they should apply the same arguments to whatever they're forwarding.
There's the problem.
Yeah.
Should. There's the problem. They should. And they don't. And they're dishonest. Remember, there's that dishonest word again.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah. Dishonest. Because somebody who has no concept of what dishonest is can't be dishonest. They're not being dishonest if they don't even realize what it is.
Okay,
that's important. I'm very bad at expressing myself, but
no, you're right on the mark. That's something that I've mentioned before. I don't know if you remember, where I would say that you, what was the expression I would use? You were taught wrong. It takes the impetus off of somebody that the information that they've got is wrong because they didn't know, because it was given to them. I think that's kind of the area along the lines of kind of what you're talking about right there.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, in every conversation, there's a motive behind every communication. Mm-hmm. And motive it's the center of all communication, but it's also the hardest part of it to demonstrate. And but yeah, motive is important. I mean, and what's the point of you telling me this? That's capital in anything that you know, especially when somebody's making a claim.
It is. I would very easily agree with that.
Like if somebody comes at you with their God claims, you know, and it's their survival guide. I mean, this is how they get by in life, by following these rules and imitating this person who tells me this stuff. You know, and they may genuinely like you. And if they do, then their motive is completely honest. They're saying, well, this is what I used to survive, so I'm actually helping you by trying to get you to follow this too, because it's working for me.
So how do we try to figure out which way to go with this one at this point? How far along should we entertain the request for source versus when should we just, I don't know, bail? I guess is probably the best way that I can word it. Like I said, for me, I would be willing to go back 3 steps to say, okay, this is how a piece of information is, and it was found out this way. But again, when you're live, you don't always have your 3x5 cards because, well, let's face it, who does that?
I won't, like, in a personal situation, like real time, I won't even entertain those type of conversations. One, I'm not Matt Dillahunty or Arn, so I'd get slaughtered. If I'm online, in an online forum, it depends on my audience. Because I know I'm not going to change the person I'm debating's mind. So I'm thinking of the audience. Who is reading what I am writing, who is reading what they are writing. I do this especially in my combating anti-vaccination or medical bullshit. I'm thinking of who's reading it. If I'm just in a general conversation, it depends on my mood. It's like last night, Deb caught me just before I went to bed, and I ended up staying, what, about an hour and a half later than I had planned.
Yeah.
And, yeah, real life, I won't even entertain it. Unless there is one subject that I have no issue with because I've been studying, for lack of a better word, for over 30 years. And that has to deal with homosexuality within the Bible. But other topics, I don't retain the information. I have to have my resources with me, you know, because I have so much stuff in my head, literally, that I'm going to screw something up. As I said, I'm no Matt, I'm no Arn.
Well, how can you?
But online,
how can you consider that? You know, somebody asking you for sources when you know that the person asking you for sources and all that, their entire base of reasoning is either their own or somebody's. Take my word for it, because I mean they've got one source. I mean,
Yeah.
well,
I mean, and this is stuff, you know, they're asking you to cite facts. Well, the thing is with facts is that you don't need the claimer, you don't need the presence of the claimer to prove them, unlike their Bible claims. I mean, facts can be checked independently of the
they won't, though. See, that's why in real life, I won't even entertain this.
Doesn't that kind of clarify the entire point of the conversation? I mean, it depends.
It depends on the audience. I really do. Like, for me, I look at the audience. I don't give a crap about the person I'm talking to, because I'm not going to change their mind.
That's who they're playing to, anyways.
Yeah, in real life, I will. My recall, barring one topic, is really crappy. Part of the reason being I have years going and not enough food cooking. But online, I have my database. Okay, what a lot of people don't like, for me specifically, and Deb knows, I have 6 web browsers. Each one has a specific topic on it. My anti-vax, for example, that web browser now has over 100,000 citations on it. I have 1,700 studies dealing with certain aspects of the anti-vax, but I cannot recall those without my source there. So online, I have it right here. It's on my computer. In real life, I'd be fumbling because there's just so much information, and a lot of times, regardless of what the debate is about, what the topic is, they're going to gish gallop.
Yeah.
And I cannot, I don't always recognize the gish gallop. Like, we had a conversation on another blog talk, and it wasn't until after the fact, like an hour or so after, I realized the guy was playing the junkyard in the tornado in a junkyard fallacy, but he modernized the word using a computer analogy, and I didn't catch it at the time. I could have ripped him to shreds on that alone, but I didn't recognize it. And I just don't think fast in real life. I mull over my words. That's why I write a blog.
Yeah, I have the same problem. I really suck when it comes to on-the-spot expression of...
I think
Beth,
yes.
just before you go on, though, I would also say don't feel so bad about that one. I mean, the whole point of the gish gallop is to befuddle, and it will work until we recognize, okay, they've gone ahead and they've now used these terms. Okay, the next time it comes up, somebody pulls that shit, you're going to be ready for it because you're going to know.
Yeah. See, the way my brain functions and how I operate, for lack of a better word, is that I'm a thinker. I have to, like, for an example, when I first had my stroke, I was having some digestive issues that I've had before, and it was suggested to me that, oh, it's this, so you have to stop eating this. And I'm like, that's never done anything, but I did it anyways, and it didn't help. And it's like, so I had to literally, find information, medical studies, all the, rigmarole surrounding it to determine if what was being suggested to me, and this was by my doctor, was even legitimate. And it turns out that, according to science, it's not. And I approached her with her and said, nothing supports your hunch here. I'm still having the same problem after doing everything you requested of me. But it took another 3.5 months before I came to that conclusion. So I work in a much slower, I have to rip shit to shreds. You can ask Deb, I'm a citation queen. I'll write a blog post and I'll have 300 and some odd citations in it, where someone else might have 2.
Yep.
Same information. It just took me a different process to get there. And it's frustrating in a sense that I wish I was like Matt Dillahunty or David Smalley or Arn Ra, but my brain don't work that way. And I don't slam myself for it because it works for me. I just know what my limitations are, is that, and I do try. I mean, Deb's kind of brought it out. I mean, I go in our little crazy group occasionally and I'll debate a topic. But, I mean, before I wouldn't do that. I mean, even with the original Atheist on Air, Dave Foda got me back into the whole counter-apologetic stuff. I never would have done that 10 years ago. I was like, I was done with it. But I do it now begrudgingly. So I think it all depends on who your audience is how you approach when to bail.
I'm just too stubborn. I usually keep going until I make them give up.
She's very good at it too.
That's a tactic.
Yeah. And sorry about that. Sorry about that dead moment a couple of seconds ago. I was sending a quick message to all of the hosts because there's a running joke. Maybe we'll get it. Maybe we'll get it in a minute. But no, I totally understand that. And see, that's the problem that we run into. If you've got a citation, it's hard to remember all this stuff. I mean, it just is. Learning music and then having it memorized so that you can just play it off the top of your head and learn how to march and where to march and make sure that you don't bump into anybody. It takes a long time to, a lot of work to really get to that. And I dare say you would probably remember a lot more than you think. But again, that's a different topic for me.
I think I just lost my thought. Shit.
See, there you go, disproving my point. Appreciate that. Thanks ever so much. Little support tonight. If you come in here, you guest hosting, because the least you could do is try to pull a little bit of weight.
Oh, I hate that.
She did work a full evening,
Yeah.
And I'm guessing a pretty busy one, so she's still awake. This is a good thing.
Good point.
I'm not snoring on your show.
No, that's
wow.
that's
as I have done on.
By the way, where's Tech?
I know that's Tech's job.
That's true. He's busy driving right. Hi, Tech. He's supposed to be listening to the show when he's driving, which is tomorrow, which for him is now. So there you go, Tech. Real meta.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Tomorrow is now.
Well, it is for him.
Oh, I know what my thought was.
But when will we be seeing now?
Well, whatever you're
Or is that
now, I'm experiencing the same thing 6 hours in the future. So there.
Well, yes, we know you're from the future, yes. But we're looking at now. Are we sure this is now or tomorrow's now?
No, your now is was for me.
Oh, I'm trying to paraphrase a movie quote, but nobody's getting it.
No, I'm getting it.
I recognize it, but
okay.
But yeah, I was gonna say, going back to the whole presuppositional thing, and this, our ability to recall citation and knowledge. If we are unable, like if we just say, well, I read a study, it'd be like, well, what study? And it's like, this is where, going back to the whole badgering, bullying, being a troll, this is the tactic that they use. And it's not just the presuppositionalists, although they are primary. If you're not literally on your toes, it can get very disconcerting, for lack of a better word. It's like, that's why I will not debate.
Psychologically, they're asking you to lead them. They're asking you for a trail of breadcrumbs, so to speak. And if you can't provide it, and don't forget they're playing to their audience. So
yes,
to their audience, the guy who's speaking, the claimer, is usually the guide. So if you can't leave a trail of breadcrumbs to whatever you're saying, then they're gonna make you look, quote unquote, lost. So
the problem is, then if you do,
the only alternative solution for their followers is to follow the guy who knows, and that's what the claimer is pretending to be, the guy to follow.
That's a good way of putting it.
No, they don't. No, they don't. They will follow whoever it is that they've been told to follow, even straight through.
If they were told to follow by somebody they trust, and it all comes down to trust.
Yes, and they are going to trust their pastor and their preacher and their presuppositionalist, like the aforementioned people, because it's impossible for them to be wrong, and the facts have to be wrong because the facts have to be wrong. Otherwise, then they would be wrong, and I can't follow somebody. I've been following somebody for 10, 12, 20, my whole life. I've been following this.
And when you find out that they are wrong and come to grips with that reality, it's very depressing, and it's very, very hard. Speaking from experience, it took me 10 years to get through it. Because when I finally rejected religion, it was like my whole life's been a lie. And people cannot face that reality.
Well,
you're a FUD thing.
That's the thing is, with us skeptics, we tend to project our thinking methods to other people. We tend to assume that they can think in the same way we do.
Oh, but God, I hope people don't.
But they don't have that concept of right or wrong. I mean, when you hand the reins of self-governance or survival or making value judgments over to somebody else, when you let somebody else decide for you what's right and wrong and good and bad and all that, there is no right and wrong. There's only trust and same. It sounds almost an argument reduced to what's the Latin expression? Argumentum ad
litem?
No, to reduce something to absurdity. But
reduction to absurdity.
Yeah, argumentum ad absurdum. But
yeah.
But that's basically it. There is no right and wrong. There's only who said what and who trusts who.
And that's the problem that I've got. That you can bring all the facts, you can bring all the citations, you could bring the experimental piece right in front of somebody, and they will say, "Oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say this." They'll call it fake. That's as far as I'm going to take it.
But take that point. Okay, they're calling it something. What they're saying isn't actually at all what they're thinking, at least not to you. Because if they think what they're really saying is doesn't match, does not compute. You know, this does not correspond to what this guy I trust with my life told me. That's
right.
It doesn't go any further than that. It's just reject, does not compute, exterminate.
Right, but the problem that we end up with is some people will just say, this does not comport with what I have accepted. That I'm trying to pick my words very carefully on this one. Therefore, I reject it whole cloth. And the person I'm specifically thinking of is the woman that filmed herself going through the whatever museum exhibit it was showing.
Oh yes.
You know which
Yes.
shit I gotta find
I
the
wrote
video.
a blog post on it. I might be able to find it.
Yeah,
That's
all she's saying. Like, you know, through the whole video, that was a painful thing to watch. But through the whole video, she might as well say, you know, it doesn't match. And like they're going to call it any negative adjective. Actually, what adjective they're using to describe whatever they're seeing that doesn't match with their indoctrination or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's just the only important point is that it's negative and that it sends a negative feeling, a feeling of mistrust.
Yeah, it's
they're interchangeable adjectives in those circumstances.
Yeah, they have no meaning. It's not even mistrust. It's complete abject disassociation from it. She was mocking, and she said, you know, how is this? How could anyone even consider this? It's complete absence of consideration for what even possible might be. Beth, you were going to say something a moment ago.
Oh, I was going to say, do you want to use her name or no?
If you've got the video, I'll put the link in the note. You know what?
Please don't.
What was it? Pardon?
Please don't. Hasn't it had enough advertising? But anyways, yeah.
Oh, that thing, it's still going around. Trust me, I get all the crazy news.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, truth be told, as an example of the type of dismissive nature that we've dealt with, it's probably a good idea for folks to be refamiliarized with it, just to see the kind of thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just taking one point, which is they take all the hits they get on their videos and they use them as a argument to popularity.
Yeah, and if there was a different way of, you know, inserting it into our show so that we...
Yeah, I know.
I would go ahead and do that. Believe me, I would. But be that as it may.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. So, yeah, Beth, what was this person's name?
Megan Fox, not the actress.
Yeah.
There is a Megan Fox actress as well.
Yes.
Yeah, she went into an actual museum.
Yeah, natural history.
Natural museum. And basically...
She poo-pooed it.
Oh, yeah, she's going around.
I mean, she didn't even...
Look at this. They said
she didn't have any... Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, she didn't even have any arguments against. I mean, and if you've been in any type of debating situation for any length of time, especially within the creation evolution genre, the same canards, and this happens in anti-vax, it happens in anti-GMO, it happens in climate change, yada yada yada. In fact, they're actually the same talking points, just the words are changed. They use the same debunked talking points over and over, and that's all she did through the whole video.
That's the only thing you can learn from that, is actually who her survival guide or who her particular well, whoever she follows is.
Yeah, there was one I saw. It was Richard Dawkins video, and I don't remember the title offhand. I'd have to look for it. And he actually interviewed a creationist, and she's from the States. I don't remember her name off the top of my head. And for every, he laid out the whole evolution, and just like this Megan Fox, just totally ignored it. I mean, but didn't have any sound reasoning, just because it went against what she believed. And I think when it gets to somewhat of that age, which I'm going to guess maybe 10, 15 years younger than I, so in your 40s, when you get so indoctrinated, that deeply for so long, trying to change that is really difficult. I mean, it can be done. I mean, we all know who Jerry DeWitt is. I mean, Dan Barker, yes. He's another one. I mean, myself, I was almost 30 when I deconverted. So it is possible, but it's really difficult and it's really hard. In fact, I just posted an article the other day about a Amish, and he was raised in the Pentecostal church and eventually drifted over to Mennonite. The Anabaptist joined a Amish community and ran into somebody, and just one question, and I think it was, who created your creator?
Yeah.
Was asked to him, and it pretty much started his path towards atheism, but he still maintains the Amish lifestyle of simplicity, the electricity, stuff like that. But he no longer is an Anabaptist. It was in his, I'm going to say, mid-40s when he deconverted. It's just, it's very few and far between. If you look at the demographics now, it's the young kids, the younger, the teens that are growing up non-religious. They rejected it, it's, 14 and 15, and now, well, Amanda Scott's a good example. She rejected religion, and, she's gone full bore in the secular community. Morgan's another one. Our one co-host on Beyond the Trailer Park. She's, fairly young. It's indoctrination into this garbage. If we don't get them young enough, and I think it goes back, back to how do we combat the question of, were you there or how do you know? It's something that has to be taught.
Mm-hmm.
Very young age. And consistently.
It's really instinctive. I mean, what they hook into is, to convert somebody, to deconvert somebody. I mean, the only road there is you have to go through trust. They first have to trust you before they listen to anything you say. Mm-hmm. And eventually they have to, and that's the hardest part, they have to trust themselves. They have to trust their own judgment. And if you've never learned how to rely on your own judgment for anything, that's a hard road. And the later you are in life, the harder it is to adopt that.
And it makes it worse when scriptures actually specifically say, "Oh, don't lean on your own judgment."
But
Read the Bible.
That in all these religious discussions and all this, that is the central point of it all.
Yeah.
And we don't even tend to include this in a conversation. I mean, it's giving up the reins. I don't care what flavor it is, or what name the religion is, or whatever quote unquote, whatever God's concept they've invented. It's all about humans telling other people, other humans what to do, about making humans give up the reins of self-governance and handing it over to some central dictate.
Yeah. And the God idea is only served to facilitate that.
It's a ventriloquist dummy. And it's a shifting of the burden of responsibility, and it's just all sorts of dishonesty. I mean, these guys can say, well, I know it's not me who wants that. It's,
I've heard that. It's like, well, I'm not, homophobic. That's just what God says,
it's convenient to you, so
exactly. And they're, I'm just following what the Bible says, don't blame me.
I just see you here, dude.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
so no matter what your reason for doing it, you're hating people for no demonstrably good reason.
Other than your stupid moldy old book says so.
Yeah, you're sacrificing somebody else's existence to your own.
Yeah. Oh, Beth found a link to Ms. Fox.
Okay.
Yeah, I had done a blog post on her. That's why I knew I had it.
Okay, I will make sure that that's in the show notes for everybody. Normally, I would have everybody go ahead and say their piece before I close up, but I'm going to say my piece because I'm going to make it really quickly, and then I'll give everybody else their real quick to do the thing. Directly and specifically on how do you know? And the tactic itself. Like I said, I will not have somebody on my show who is dishonest. How do we disengage from this? Call it out. Simple enough. The idea of having a foam board and putting little sticky notes that says, which term, which way are we going to? Okay, theory. Is it going to be scientific or is it going to be layperson? Okay, that's the one that we're sticking with. Put it up there. Boom, done. And you stick with it. If somebody is going to be dishonest talking with you, call them out, especially if it's publicly. Because if you've got a paper trail, because it's something that my wife taught me way back when, document. Because the paper trail will save your ass every time. Call them out. Show them for the charlatan that they are when they're doing it intentionally that way. Now remember, it could be that they don't really understand what it is that they're doing. You can occasionally give credence to the idea that it's not malicious so much as it's just plain stupidity. But if you know that somebody is going ahead and they're trying to stall you and they're trying to frustrate you, if they're trying to be dishonest by using a stalling technique, by saying, well, how do you know this? Call them out. Show them off. Pull the screen out from around the man and let everybody see who's running the controls and how they're running the controls. Because if you can show that somebody is twisting a knob, intentionally skewing, you can change where the FUD lies. And if it's on your side, good. Because when we're using FUD, we're not saying, come follow me. When we use FUD, we say, go look up what everybody else has found out.
Mm-hmm. This is how you can know too. That's exactly it.
Go ahead, Joseph. Go ahead and run with that for a couple moments. Because, like I said, here's your big opportunity to close up.
Oh, well, yeah.
If you want another second, I'll throw it over to the others.
Well, on your point. When we're asked how do we know, well, we can provide sources. We can provide a trail of breadcrumbs to the source that the person can check themselves. And you had it exactly right when you said our goal is not follow me. Actually, our goal is basically what we're actually doing is sharing survival advice, because he who survives the best is one who's best informed about their environment that they're surviving in. And what we're doing basically is sharing information amongst ourselves. And you're exactly right when you say, well, our goal is the antithesis of follow me. So if they ask us, how do you know? And we provide a trail of breadcrumbs so that them or their audience can verify it later, well, our presence isn't required at all.
Actually, you know what? Really quickly, just to base back onto what I was saying, because I just realized if we go ahead and say, okay, here are the facts, boom. I just realized there is another counter to the how do you know that? Well, how about you prove that I'm wrong?
Yep.
And how was your information better than mine? Why,
Yeah. But I said my piece. I need to shut. I need to stiffu. So yeah.
Basically, what they're saying is to their audience. They're saying to their audience, don't trust him, trust me.
Yeah.
They're basically throwing shit at you.
And people are throwing money back for the privilege of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Heretic Woman, anything that you'd like to close out with?
Well, it's just a lot of smoke and mirrors, It's well, how do you trust your own brain if it didn't come from God and that bullshit? What? It's like, if I thought my brain came from God, I definitely wouldn't trust that shit because it's being manipulated by somebody else. What a stupid idea. Like, the idea that our brains being, neurons and electro pulses or I know my terminology is screwed up, but you know what I mean. It is like, oh, well, that's, not functional. Like, no, it is, because that's what it is. And here we are. And this is me thinking and talking, like, hello. Yeah. And she just made a good point. The Pharaoh was mind controlled because the Pharaoh in the Bible said, let these Israelite people go, get the hell out of my kingdom. And it was God who turned around and said, oh, no, I'm not done with you. I want you to not let them go, even though you want to, and because I want to screw with you some more.
So God was playing with Barbies.
Basically, yeah.
Having imaginary tea parties and...
Yeah. And yet the Christians want to say, or I've heard it from Muslims too, well, God doesn't want, mindless robots. Yes, he does.
Isn't it funny how this all conveniently lines up with the goals of the guy claiming all this?
Exactly. Like it was planned or something.
Just like anybody talking, anybody claiming a god, just like either they're somebody else's marionette or they've got a ventriloquist dummy on their knee.
Yep. Both.
No, that basically just means that religion's whole job is to fist all of society. Beth, anything that you'd like to finish off with after I just dropped that in somebody's lap?
Well, actually, I want to piggyback off a point Joseph made and one that Deb just made. With Joseph, he goes not to follow me, but evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a big thing. And going back to, we have to teach our young to to do that. You don't trust something, follow the evidence. See where the evidence leads you, and don't be afraid of the result. It may prove or notion or idea. And then some devs said that the argument to, my God's better than your God, and really whether it comes from God, whether our ability to reason comes from God, really doesn't matter. God doesn't matter in any of these discussions, because even if God existed, my fucking worship, excuse my language. Okay,
you froze up for a second.
Even if God did exist, he does not deserve my worship.
Ah, yes.
So it would not matter to me whether God exists or not, or where, how do I know comes from. Because,
well, at least not the one they're selling anyways.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, Dawkins has in his book, The God Delusion, probably one of the better quotes, concerning God in the Old Testament being a megalomaniacal, I can't say that word, mystical, and then he goes on with a bunch of other adverbs and adjectives describing the God of the Old Testament, and he's right. Sorry, but the God that's presented in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, he's not all hunky-dory peachy keen, neither is Christ. I wouldn't worship them even if it did exist.
And if it's the same one from old and new, then they're just the same asshole. He's just being slightly less
bipolar.
Yeah.
More bipolar than I am. But yeah. It just comes down to trolling. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. So we got to go ahead and roll up out of here, and very close to on time for change. So all of you who've been watching and listening, thank you very much for being with us. Hope that you've enjoyed all of our perspectives and found something worthwhile in all of what we've had to say. Joseph, as always, thank you very much. I hope that your coffee is worthwhile, and you have yourself a good weekend, man. Thanks for being.
You too, and thanks for having me on.
No worries. Beth, hi.
Hi.
Thanks for pitch hitting on. Like I said, it's nice to have this incestuous relationship from one podcast to another, isn't it?
Yeah.
As Deb said, it's surprising I'm actually still awake.
Are we going to have little incest babies?
Well,
she's incest podcasts.
She's already got the kitten. That's a start.
So anything that you'd like to plug, or should we just leave it all on Heretic Woman's shoulders?
Oh, gee.
Oh, the easiest way to find me is on Twitter, Dune998. That connects to my Facebook. That connects to, well, not really Google, but it also connects to my blog. But the easiest way to find me on Facebook and Google is under Beth Hambridge.
And
I'll
she's
let Deb plug the other half.
Oh, thanks.
I lost my thought.
All right. Well, of course. Well, actually, a bit of an announcement. We've changed the time of the show.
Yeah.
We're moving back 2 hours, and we're now live at 7:30 p.m. We're just a little bit late for some people that we've wanted to have on, and just make things a little bit easier. So we're going to shift to a little bit earlier, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. I know. But change can be good sometimes. So we're going to give it a go. And this week is kind of fun. We're going back to Scientology. A friend of mine from one of the Toronto groups I recently found out dabbled in Scientology for a while. So he's going to come on, Mark Tordai, and tell us his story of being a Scientologist in the greater Toronto area. So that's going to be fun. So that's Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
Beyond the Trailer Park, for those of you that don't.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Beyond the Trailer Park is the channel. Yes. And I am probably going to be popping up on Steve McRae's Great Debate channel around 3-ish Eastern tomorrow. There's a regular Sunday thing going on. So I missed trolling the flat earthers this week because I was just back from Ottawa and I was too tired. But yeah, apparently we regularly go and troll flat earth channels now. Just
the worst things that you can do.
Yeah, they call it rum and coke Tuesdays.
Brilliant. Anyway, so of course, everybody, thank you very much for being with us. If you would like to catch up on the stuff that we do, please take a swing over to holycrapthevlogcast.com. You'll be able to get the podcast link right from over there. And I'm going to be seeing about doing some work during the summer while I'm going to be off from my DJ sets. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail message, phone number there is 859-HCTV-554, 859-4288-554. We'll be looking forward to seeing you. Even though my DJ sets are going to be wrapping up for the summer, I am not stopping doing this show. That's simply not going to be a thing. I'm going to keep going until it's not fun anymore. However,
what does it have to do with this show? What does your DJing have to do with this show?
Well, during the summer, I stopped doing most of the DJ work that I do. Oh. And considering that during the week I'm DJing 4 out of 5 nights a week, you know, some people might kind of wonder, oh, is he going to stop? No, this show keeps going on. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
But now you derailed me and I forgot where it was going to be going. Okay.
You're still doing the show.
You're still doing the show, but
hey, I was on topic.
No, you were. But as real quick for everybody, please remember, with the summer months, with the holidays going on right now for everybody, if you are enjoying time out on the water, I will keep reminding everybody every opportunity I can. If you are the captain of a vessel, I don't care how small it is, don't partake of anything that can cloud your judgment. Let the people that are on with you do whatever the hell they want for the most part, but don't screw that up. You want to get drunk and fall down on the ground on dry land, that's fine. You bump your head, who cares? You fall down in the water, it will swallow you whole and never think twice about it. You don't get a second chance at that most of the time. Please be careful during the summer. This is coming from somebody who lived never more than 2 miles away from the ocean. Please be safe. We're looking forward to seeing you guys again next week. Bat time, same bat channel. Is it a little bit too soon for that? I'm sorry. I don't care. But thank you for being with us. And we will see you soon. I have no idea what next week's topic is going to be just yet, but considering that it is going to be a Power of 10 episode, it's a pretty good bet it's going to be a not safe for work episode. So you might get the opportunity to be on with us. We'll have to wait and see. Meantime, as always, please stay safe. I wish you all, as always, the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you well. And of course, my lady, what can I say? Mwah. Matane Fujin. I love you. I miss you. Dream of me. Till the next time we get together, everybody, as always, good night.